Hello, rock climbers and other curious creatures. The topic of today's video, I will be analyzing the career of one of rock climbing's most beloved trailblazers. I'm, of course, talking about Chris Sharma. Chris, he's an American rock climber from Santa Cruz, California. He started climbing at the tender age of 14 years old, and in that same year, he won the adult 1996 U.S. Open Bouldering Nationals. First year climbing, and is the best to do it at that time, or at least the best competing. So as you can imagine, Chris is something of a prodigy at this point. There's no telling where his career might take him. Chris would then set his sights on some outdoor projects, and he would send Necessary Evil, grade 514C, that's 8C+, in the Virgin River Gorge. This was a big deal because this was the hardest sport climb in North America at the time. So, wins Bouldering Nationals his first year climbing, basically second or third year climbing, then goes on to send the hardest line in North America. So really cementing him as like this prodigy upstart, with untapped potential. And here's an interesting little clip of Alex Honnold discussing this achievement of Chris's on the Struggle podcast. The Nugget Climbing Show podcast. So we'll roll that clip here.
You told a story about Chris Sharma, you trying Necessary Evil, and then Chris Sharma
it's a
doing
classic.
Necessary Evil. Can you tell me about that? Can you tell the story again? And I have some. I want to elaborate it on.
I forget what I said on Tim Ferriss, but I mean the nuts and bolts of it are that Chris Sharma did Necessary Evil in his second year of climbing or something. I mean it was the hardest route in the country at the time. Was it his third year climb? Basically, Chris Sharma just started climbing, climbs Necessary Evil. It's the hardest route, or maybe the hardest done by an American. Maybe Just Do It had already been done. I don't know the exact history, but it was this incredible achievement in American climbing. You're like, cool, Chris, he does it in a couple tries, no biggie. And he wanted to call it whatever, it doesn't matter. But it meant
a downgrade.
No, he wanted to call it turd burglar or something, something totally stupid, or
right.
The fart smuggler. It meant nothing to him. He's just cool, I climbed this route, it was fun, moving on.
Yeah.
And and I've tried Necessary on and off over the years, and I've basically been climbing and training my whole life, and I still can't freaking climb Necessary. And you're sort of like, man, after 20 plus years of effort, I'm still not as good as Chris Sharma was as a 14-year-old who had just found this new sport.
So clearly there was something very special about Chris, and you can chalk it up to strength. I'm sure there's something to be said that he's got genetically strong connective tissue, and all that, body type, all of that sort of thing applies in the case of Chris. But I think there's a special it factor here with Chris Sharma. I think in terms of the way he moved and, the vision he had for what rock climbing could be for him was so radically different than the way other people were doing it at the time that, he was tapping into something greater. And I think Chris is like this rock climbing saint. He really dedicated himself to the sport, and I believe developed some sort of spiritual power where, he would find these flows on routes and just was unstoppable, an unstoppable beast. Now, Chris has never been one to shy away from the spiritual aspects of climbing. Climbing is a lot like yoga in that in order to execute properly, in order to find that flow, it's really about how you can unify both the body and the mind. And what's evident in Chris's movement style is that he knew he was capable of doing things that other people simply thought wasn't possible. So Chris's climbing style is very explosive, very dynamic. You'll often see him grabbing onto holds with full power through his hands, and then dead pointing to the next spot, and then loading up again, launching, loading up, launching, which was much different and, more mentally demanding than the style at the time, which was more of a slow burn where, climbers would engage tension and climb very statically. He was much more into these bursts of power followed by, relaxed ease, and then burst of power followed by relaxed ease. And Chris had the strength to make this climbing style work for him, but also I think, he had the mentality. He was able to turn it on, that flow state, that try hard, that, okay, now I'm trying hard. Thoughts out of the mind, body climbing, and that's that. And that is a skill that it can be trained, but not through rock climbing. I think it's an innate spiritual skill. And here is another climber, a gentleman by the name of Tom Bolger, and he talks about this concept in this clip, and I think it's really important to understand, just how demanding climbing is, and how it's not just about training the body, but it really is also about training the mind.
For me, I think everybody has their own little system, their own way of approaching a climb that works for them. It's not a topic that I think is that well studied or well sort of shown within climbing. Everybody's maybe followed a training plan at some point, but I'm not sure that there's that many people who follow a sort of mental program or an approach towards climbing. And I found that for me, having a little mantra, which just directs my thoughts. For me, I need to stay in the moment when I'm climbing. It's too easy for me to wander into, what if that crimp up with the right hand feels bad, or what if like my foot slips, or what about that last clip, or what about, if you start thinking in those things, you won't flow. And as soon as I kind of use this little mantra that I found for myself, I can sort of enter into that flow state, and it helps me to stay there. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've found has been a big change in my climbing. I can kind of enter into that flow state when I want, using that mantra, which years ago I couldn't do. And it really depended on if that day was going to be a good day or not.
Now, I really think that this was Chris's key to success, is his ability to just be hyper mindful on the wall. I'm not sure that he was necessarily stronger than other climbers of his time. He just had this vision, and he would find these flows that were completely revolutionary. And, now other climbers have adopted his style, that really dynamic sort of load up, launch, where you're this triangle, these 3 points of contact just flipping up the wall in this dynamic, flurry of motion. We've seen that style become pervasive throughout rock climbing, and I think it's really Chris's visionary mind and his ability to tap into the present moment on the wall that we can thank for pushing climbing in the modern direction that we now see it going. And here I found a clip of Chris climbing with a number of his contemporaries back in the day, and I think this really highlights what made Chris so special. It's not clear that any of these men are any stronger than Chris. In fact, I don't think that they are. I think all these people are, operating at the highest level in rock climbing at the time. But Chris is still so dominant, and I really think it's that it factor that he brings to the table. He's just able to be so mindful and so present on the wall and so relaxed. That's the thing. He really knows how to be relaxed on the holds and when to lay the power through his fingers and when to ease up. He's so in tune, and you'll see that on display as he comes up here. None of these men are slouches. They're all crazy strong climbers, but Chris is so dominant and makes it look so easy. And, you know, it makes you wonder, like, what is it that is taking him to the next level? And here we see him sending this route, using the nice heel, making use of all of his limbs. But he's just so relaxed, like right there on the jug, like long arms, just chilling. Just still chilling. And boom, just easy for him. Now, this brings me to the next point about Chris. And he almost lives in infamy with this one, but apparently the man never trained. So he would work on projects and didn't do any sort of climbing specific training, which is just mind-blowing, you know? But I think it also feeds back into this loop we're talking about, where his style was, you couldn't fake it, and it was a lifestyle for him. He like lived, every second was rock climbing, and that's why he was able to bring so much focus on the wall, because, you know, it was a true lifestyle for him. It was truly, he was a climbing monk. He was really that guy. He was a spiritual climbing master. And, you know, he never trained. It's crazy. He says he never trained. And yeah, in a world now with the Olympics and, you know, Alex Magos and all these guys who are like training their fingers like you wouldn't believe, and Chris still stands by, you know, he didn't train. When he was at his peak, he was just climbing outside on real rock, getting that strong, being the best in the world. And yeah, I mean, you can't make this shit up.
Well, for me, you know, I'm a little bit different than I think most climbers. I never really trained very specific. I think a big advantage for me, I started climbing very young, and so my body adapted to climbing. And yeah, I think just climbing is the best way to train for climbing. They both succeed, but in the end, it took them both about 6 months to achieve their goal. So my point is that you have different approaches, and everyone has a different way of accessing, you know, their motivation and yeah, they're the best version of themselves. So I think it's similarly, like this man was just asking. I mean, everyone has a different way. We're all different and unique individuals. Same with learning, or you know, some people learn better in a classroom. Others people prefer learning just in, you know, in life. For example, for myself, I remember in school taking Spanish class, and I had really bad marks. You know, for me it was just like unnecessary data to memorize in school. And then, of course, when I was in Spain and I was with climbers, and you know,
girlfriend usually works
and
very well.
girlfriend
In this language,
of course, that helped as well. But it was a totally different situation. It wasn't just like useless information to memorize. It was something that I wanted to learn, you know. And so I think for me in climbing it's similar. It's like I prefer to have my objective in front of my face to know why I need to try so hard.
And you know, I think if Chris Sharma did train, if he was a gym rat, you know, doing 2 sessions a day like Adam Andra, it would have defeated the purpose of what climbing was for him. You know, for him, climbing really was a holistic lifestyle thing. It was him. It was who he is. He really lived it. He really was a spiritual climbing master. He is still doing it, and he is still operating at one of the highest levels in the sport. And you know, Chris, I thank you. I admire you. And yeah, I think people like him are just so special, and there's so much to be learned about what you can do if you really put your mind wholeheartedly to something, and you know, a little bit of God-given talent goes a long way too. But, you know, Chris really had that it factor, and I think all of us climbers, especially if you consider yourself a sport climber, you have a lot to owe to this man. You owe him a debt of gratitude. I know I certainly do. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.